Being a gamer and a content creator, my PC is definitely the most important place where I spend most of my time on. If I never had any PC, I wouldn't be a YouTuber right now. I probably would not have any gaming knowledge. I probably would not have any programming knowledge, and I wouldn't have made Timeline.com and many more things. And thanks to my family, I've got this PC in 2013. And since then, I've been upgrading many things of my own, like the cabinet that you see right there, and some more things like the power supply. The reason why I never upgraded the internals like the processor, RAM and the motherboard was because all of them I had to buy at one time, and that's because my motherboard does not support DDR4 memory and it is Intel's LGA1151 slot, and I wanted to upgrade to Ryzen, and doing that all at once would cost a lot. But this is finally the time and I have got everything, and it's gonna be the best upgrade I'll do on my PC. So if you're interested and if you are someone who's planning to build a PC in the future, keep watching the video. So what is up gamers, my name is Priyam and welcome to my PC build video. Before we talk about anything, if you want the details of every parts that I have used, go to priyamraj.com/gear or just check the links in the description. So first off, I was using Intel's motherboard. I don't really remember the model number, but it was a basic motherboard, and then an Intel i5 processor 3rd generation that had 4 cores and 4 threads. And then the RAM was a basic DDR3 Corsair's RAM, 8GB. And so these are the 3 things I need to upgrade right now, including one more thing that you'll know later in the video. And as you can see on my desk, I have everything ready to install. And obviously I'll be taking some help from my older brother because I can't do everything all alone. So first off, I took out my existing PC and opened it up. After that, I took out my GPU because that's something I won't be upgrading right now. I'll instead wait for the RTX 30 series to come in India. I also took out my mSATA SSD, which is a special type of SSD that you might not have heard of, but I have been using it on this PC and I think I should use it on the new PC. And fun fact, I made an unboxing video of this thing in like 2016 or 17. You can go and watch that video right now, which is on this channel. And cringe alert for that. After that, I took out my existing motherboard and I'll tell you it was not that easy. I had to take it out without touching the RAM or the CPU, and that is why I did it with some extra care and it took some time. Once that was done, I had to flip the cabinet to take out the hard drives. Now this was not necessary as I'll be using the same hard drives, but I just wanted to clean everything before installing any new things in there. And by the way, I use laptop hard drives here because we had 2 laptops in the past that stopped working, so I just took out the hard drives to use them on my PC. So since my cabinet is ready now, let's take a look at everything that I'll be using for this build. So first off, we have the motherboard right here, which is gonna hold everything, so it had to be perfect. So this right here is MSI's B550 Mortar Wi-Fi gaming motherboard. Go check the specs and price of this thing and give me one reason why this motherboard is not absolutely perfect. Next up, we have the RAM, and it has to be G-Skill's RGB Trident. Not only is it the best looking RAM out there, but the price and the performance of this thing is awesome. I got the 3600MHz 16GB one. And finally we have the CPU, and I know what you're gonna say here, I should have waited for the Ryzen 4000 series. And I kind of know that, but it's fine. I just needed 6 cores or something more than that, and I think this CPU fulfills everything for me right now. Plus my motherboard will support the future Ryzen models, so I can just sell this processor later and buy the new one. So that's it with everything. Now let's move on to the exciting part of the video, assembling everything. Now I did say exciting here, but it turned out to be the least exciting one. And that's because the mSATA SSD that I shown you before in the video did not work with this motherboard. And no, I'm not blaming the motherboard here, it's because of me. I thought that mSATA is same as M2 slot. And so I was forced to buy an NVMe SSD from Amazon, which costed me a bit, but that was my only option. And since that's gonna take a while and I could not wait that much, I will just install the Windows on my hard drive temporarily. And since I have no patience, let's continue the build. Now here was the hardest part, installing the CPU. So I did not do it, instead I asked my brother to do it for me. And if you're ever going to build a PC, please be careful while doing this one. It takes a lot of precision and you have to be careful. And make sure to match the corners before putting the processor. After that we installed the RAMs in alternative slots because that's how you should do it. And they just popped in real quick. And so the last thing here was installing the heatsink, and it got a bit tricky with the screws, but we figured it out and did it anyway. After that, it was finally the time to put the motherboard in the cabinet. But before that, I cleaned up everything and figured out things like where will the wires go, which position will it be, and everything else. And once everything was done, I finally installed the motherboard. And yes, this also took some time, but it was fun. And then all the wires from the SMPS. And that is basically for the power supply, like for the processor fan, the front RGB fans, and then we have the motherboard power and more. After that, I installed my GPU back in place in the lower slot because there are 2 slots in here, and I thought the lower slot will make it look more spacious. And it actually did. And so the final things were doing all the wire management stuff, cleaning up things, and installing the hard drives. And once that was done, we closed up the cabinet and put it back where it was. And as I said before, the NVMe would take at least 2 days to come, so I installed Windows on the hard drive in a temporary partition. And powering on the PC for the first time there was a bit scary, but once we did, it was astonishing. The RGB lighting in the RAM is really unique and something that I have never seen ever before. It's like there is liquid filled inside of it. And like I said before, since it was a hard drive, it took a bit of time while installing Windows on this thing. Also, there were some other issues like the RAM was not running on 3600 MHz and the monitor was not getting any display output out of the DisplayPort, but we figured out everything later anyway. And we did not record this part, but basically there was some extra RGB strip that was installed in our homes in every single rooms in the ceiling, and we realized that this motherboard has the same slot like that RGB strip. And so we used it on this build and wrapped it all around the corners. And this made it even better, like it looked amazing. And so finally 2 days happened, got my NVMe, and in case you don't know, this is the XPG RGB NVMe, which is 256 GB. And so after installing this, the build would be finished. And also, I did not know that NVMe's are this small, like I expected them to be a bit longer, but whatever. So I installed it as soon as possible in the lower slot because again, it would look more spacious there. But after a while I realized that it won't work in the lower slot because in the lower slot, if you use it, the lower PCI slot, which is for the GPU, won't work. Now I know this is weird, but it is what it is. And again, the RGB on this thing is also awesome, but definitely not as much as of the RAMs. And then later installing Windows on this thing was like 10 times faster than doing it on the hard drive. So we later then finally closed it up, installed every essential softwares and drivers, and the PC was ready. And then later I installed all my favorite games like Valorant, Fortnite and CSGO, tested FPS on all of them, and it was at least 144 on all of them, and that made me happy. Like on the previous config with the same GPU, I was getting around 120 FPS, and after doing this upgrade, now I'm getting at least 220 FPS on Valorant. Yes, 220 on low settings. And this cranks up all the way up to 400 FPS sometimes. And all that on the same GPU. Now I'm not gonna do any benchmarks or stuff, but that is all you need to know. Again, links are in the description if you wanna buy any of these parts or just check them out. Now go to the comments and let me know your opinions on this build, and leave a like on this video before going. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.